Judaism is a monotheistic religion, meaning believing in one God. It was developed among the ancient Hebrews and combines theology, law, and cultural traditions. Jews in Barbados attend Sabbath services most Friday nights at the synagogue in Synagogue Lane, Bridgetown. The museum on the same property is open to the public weekdays during the day and tells the fascinating story of the arrival of Jewish settlers to Barbados in 1627.
This is the synagogue building that was rebuilt in 1834. There was a hurricane in 1831, and the community rebuilt this building in 1834. They spent 5,000 British pounds in 1834. This is almost $1 million in today's money. So they rebuilt the building very optimistically. After they rebuilt it by 1851, it was used for the last wedding. And as I explained before, in the 1920s, this was abandoned and it became a warehouse and a law library and an office building. It was various things. When it came to restoration in 1985, they were able to locate the architect's plans from the rebuild in 1834. So what you're looking at now is a museum quality replica of the way people were coming here to pray in 1834. This is the way it was in 1834. The only difference is that the chandeliers back then would have had candles. We didn't want candles in our chandeliers because they're very hard to maintain. The original chandeliers with the candles are hanging in a museum in Delaware. The Winterthur DuPont Museum in Wilmington, Delaware displays the chandeliers from the Bridgetown Synagogue very nicely. When they went to restore the synagogue here in 1985, they didn't want the originals because of the candles. So they just took photographs and replicated them and made them electric. So everything here is modern materials. The only two items that are original from 1834 are above the ark here, you have these Hebrew letters. This is a Hebrew abbreviation for the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. These are the 10 Commandments. This appears in the book of Exodus. And this is Hebrew abbreviation for the 10 Commandments. This is a very typical installation in a synagogue over the Torah scrolls. But in 1985, these two Hebrew tablets were found hanging over the swimming pool of the Governor General's house in Barbados. That's where they had been taken. Nobody knows how they got there. This is now Ilaro Court, I think. But they were brought back. They knew what they were. They had been, the chlorine at the pool had faded the gold lettering, so they re-lettered them and reinstalled them. So these tablets are from 1834. The black plaque that you saw right underneath it, the black plaque with white lettering. This is Hebrew lettering. It says, Da lifnei mi ata omed, and it translates into, know before whom you stand. So if you're standing praying here, this is supposed to intimidate you. Know before whom you stand. 3 years ago, Paul Altman, who's a member of our community, a prominent member of the business community here, he found this in his garage. And he said, this doesn't belong here. Where does this belong? So he brought it back to the synagogue, and we found out this is actually where it belongs. This is also from 1834. This is a Sephardi synagogue. This is a particular tradition that Sephardi Jews follow. And the way this synagogue is organized, it's hierarchical. So the Torah is up here. This is the most important part of the sanctuary. All the important members of the community hang out up here. The president sits in a chair here. Other leaders of the community are sitting up front. The further back you are, the less important you are, or the less money you give, that kind of thing. So this is the most important part. In a Sephardic synagogue, when they read the Torah, they bring it from here, they sing songs, and they march around, and they open it up on that desk. The desk is called the bima, the reader's desk, and they chant the Torah from there, and then they bring it back around and reinstall it. So this is the tradition in a Sephardic synagogue. I'm an Ashkenazi Jew. This is a North European Jew. In my tradition, the synagogue looks nothing like this, and it looks like a church that you would see. Everybody faces pointing in the front, and the rabbi stands here, and the Torah is here, and everything happens from up front. This is the famous step that was first uncovered. This is 17th century marble. As you know, there's no marble in Barbados. So as soon as they found this, they knew that this was a significant place. There's a prominent historian in Barbados, I'm sure you know the name, Dr. Carl Watson. Dr. Watson was involved, he was supervising this excavation. So Dr. Watson tells the story, and I get some of my stuff from him. He's an amazing man. So when they uncovered this, they knew what they had found because the records of the community describe the operation of this ritual bath. But when he uncovered this in 2007, the water had long disappeared. So they excavated this whole area. You have to imagine it was dry. Dr. Watson is standing here with his shovel. He knows there had to be water. Where was the water? They didn't have plumbing in the 17th century. So he takes his shovel and he starts to pry between the cracks in the rocks. And while he's standing there in his work boots, this water starts to pour in. This is the original spring water that was powering this mikveh in the 1650s, before the synagogue was built. It dissipates out through the sides. It replenishes itself every 2 days. And this is what's called a kosher mikveh. It meets ritual requirements because it's flowing water. So technically, this could be used for Jewish ritual purposes. And 3 weeks ago, or about a month ago, we had the first conversion. We had the first use of this mikveh since 1851. The significance of the Sabbath. So this is it's a absolutely core tenet in Jewish religious practice. So as you know, God created the world in 6 days. It just said so right in Genesis. The Hebrew word for Genesis is Bereshit, in the beginning. So in Genesis, in the Bible, it describes God creating the world in 6 days, and on the 7th day he rested. And this has become the basis of the Jewish Sabbath, and it is universally adhered to by anybody who says that he's Jewish. The Sabbath starts Friday night, and it ends Saturday night, and observant Jews, very religious Jews, won't do any work at all on the Sabbath. And they have definitions of what constitutes work. So flipping a light switch is work for an Orthodox Jew. So Orthodox Jews won't use electricity on the Sabbath. I'm not an Orthodox Jew, I'm a more modern secular Jew, so I'm not following these rules, but I know what they are.
And what does kosher mean?
Kosher is also biblically sanctioned process. Kashrut, or keeping kosher, it relates to what foods are permissible for Jews to eat. And the foods that are permissible to eat are described in the Torah, in the 5 books of Moses, in 2 places. Leviticus, I think, and Numbers, the book of Numbers. But it describes that you cannot eat fish that don't have scales. The basic requirements of keeping kosher are described in the Bible. In Jewish tradition, after the Bible, the second most holy book is called the Talmud. And the Talmud is multiple volumes, and it's an interpretation of what the Torah actually means. So in the Talmud, they determined that if you want to keep kosher, not only do you have to not eat fish that don't have scales, but you have all these other rules. And so if you're a modern Jew and you're keeping kosher, you have this whole series of rules that include not mixing milk with meat. If you're going to serve a meal and you're serving meat, you cannot serve milk with it. And this is based on the biblical phrase, "Lo tevashel gedi b'chalev imo." Never boil a kid in its mother's milk. A kid goat. Never boil a kid goat in its mother's milk. over centuries, the rabbis interpreted this to mean that when Jews eat, they should never mix meat and milk. Bar mitzvah is a coming-of-age ceremony for Jewish boys and girls. The bar mitzvah is for boys, the bat mitzvah is for girls. It happens when you're 13, and it's when you become an adult member of the Jewish community, and in order to distribute your eligibility to qualify, you need to read from the Torah. That's the big deal. And it's not, I mean, it's another language. It's a separate language. And if you're not brought up reading this language, there's a lot of preparation involved. But so when you have a bar mitzvah, what you do is you learn the Torah portion for that week. And you learn how to chant it the way the original rabbis did. You're learning Judaism from thousands of years ago. And you need to be able to demonstrate it to the community. Once you've demonstrated it, you're accepted as an adult, and you become counted in what's called the minyan. So in order for Jews to pray, you need to have 10 men in a group to pray. What constitutes a man? It's somebody who's had his bar mitzvah. Are the high holidays. This includes the New Year, which is called Rosh Hashanah, and then 7 days after the end of the New Year, you have the big day of all. It's called Yom Kippur, and this is a fast day. If you don't eat anything for 24 hours, and you go to the synagogue, and it's really sort of a rehearsal for your death. You're trying to get yourself ready for the time when you don't have another Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur is the time of year when you ask forgiveness from anybody that you've hurt during the year. If you've done something wrong, it's not good enough to ask God. You have to go to the individual person and acknowledge that you've done something wrong and ask forgiveness. And you go through these. It's a time of self-examination. So those are the high holidays. Outside of the holidays, you have 3 major holidays. This is Passover, which in Hebrew is called Pesach. This celebrates the exit of the Jews from Egypt when they were slaves. You have Shavuot, which celebrates the delivery of the Torah to Moses on Mount Sinai. This happens in May. And you have Sukkot in the fall. This will happen in the middle of October. Sukkot is a remnant of an agricultural holiday. It's a harvest holiday, and it would be the equivalent of American Thanksgiving. It's a Thanksgiving holiday. These are the 3 major holidays, and then throughout the calendar you have dozens of other holidays that include Hanukkah and Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Israel Independence Day, and Tu B'Shvat, which is the celebration of the trees. It's the New Year of the trees. You have several fasts that occur during the year, Tisha B'Av and others. They commemorate disastrous times in Jewish history, of which there were many. So almost every week you have something in the Jewish calendar. It's hard to escape. So what I'm going to chant for you now is Psalm 126. I'm going to be chanting it in the original Hebrew, and this is typically what you would sing on a holiday before you start the grace after meals. That's what this is. So this is Psalm 126. Shir Hamalot B'Shuv Adonai Et Shivat Zion Ayinu Kecholim Azimale Slopinu Ulshonei